The courtroom was quiet, but not peaceful. It was a kind of silence that presses against your ears, heavy with judgment and finality. Wooden benches creaked softly as people adjusted their posture, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second echoing like a countdown. For Evan Parker, this silence felt like victory. He sat confidently at the front, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit tailored perfectly to his frame. His cufflinks gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Beside him sat his attorney, Richard Cole, one of the most expensive divorce lawyers in Chicago, known for dismantling opponents who couldn't afford to fight back. Evan leaned back, crossing his legs, glancing sideways at the defense table. And then he smiled. Because sitting there alone, without a lawyer, without paperwork, without confidence, was Lena Parker, his wife of 8 years. She wore a simple beige dress. No jewelry, no makeup heavy enough to hide the exhaustion in her eyes. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, fingers trembling just enough to give away her fear. There was an empty chair beside her. That empty chair was Evan's favorite part. She really came alone, Evan whispered with a chuckle, not even bothering to lower his voice. Richard smirked. Exactly as planned. Evan had frozen every joint account 2 weeks earlier. Credit cards canceled. Savings inaccessible. Lena had tried to hire a lawyer, but lawyers don't work for promises. Money speaks. And Lena had none. She always thought she was smarter than me, Evan muttered. Now look at her. The bailiff stood. All rise. Judge Harold Whitman, a stern man in his late 50s, entered and took his seat. His expression showed neither kindness nor cruelty, only impatience. Be seated, he said. He flipped through the case file. Case 1187B, Parker versus Parker. Divorce proceedings, asset division, and spousal support. Judge Whitman looked up. Counsel for the petitioner. Richard Cole stood smoothly. Ready, Your Honor. The judge turned to the other side. Mrs. Parker, he said, I don't see counsel with you. Are you representing yourself today? Lena swallowed. No, Your Honor, she said softly. My lawyer is on the way. Evan laughed. Not quietly, not politely. A sharp, mocking laugh that echoed through the courtroom. Judge Whitman's eyes snapped toward him. Mr. Parker, this is a courtroom. My apologies, Evan said, still smiling. It's just surprising. He stood. Your Honor, I don't mean to embarrass my wife, but she's not very organized. She struggles with finances. She doesn't understand legal matters. I offered her a generous settlement, but she refused. He turned toward Lena. I tried to help you. Lena stared straight ahead. Richard stepped in smoothly. Your Honor, we respectfully request to proceed. Mrs. Parker has had ample time to secure representation. The court cannot be held hostage by delays. Judge Whitman sighed. Mrs. Parker, he said, if your attorney does not arrive shortly, we will proceed. Do you understand? Lena nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't leave the courtroom doors behind her. Evan noticed, and he grinned, because there was no one coming. No miracle. No savior. Just an empty chair. 30 seconds, the judge said. Evan leaned toward Richard. Watch this. Judge Whitman raised his gavel. And then, the courtroom doors opened. Not slowly, not politely. They opened with authority. Every head turned. A woman stepped inside. She was tall, poised, and unmistakably powerful. Her silver-gray hair was styled perfectly. She wore a dark charcoal suit, simple, elegant, expensive. No jewelry except a thin watch on her wrist. Behind her followed 2 younger attorneys, carrying briefcases thick with files. The woman removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were calm, cold, experienced. Richard Cole froze. Color drained from his face. No, he whispered. Evan frowned. Who is that? The woman walked down the aisle, heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks. She stopped beside Lena and placed a hand on her shoulder. I apologize for the delay, the woman said, her voice steady and commanding. Court security took longer than expected. Judge Whitman straightened. And you are? He asked. The woman handed a card to the bailiff. "Margaret Hale," she said. "Senior partner at Hale and Morrison. I'm entering my appearance as counsel for the defense." A pause. Then she added, "And I'm also her mother." The courtroom didn't breathe. Evans stood abruptly. "That's impossible," he said. "Her mother died." Margaret turned her head slowly. "No," she said. "I simply stepped away when my daughter asked for a quiet life." She looked directly at Evan. "And then you mistook her kindness for weakness." Judge Whitman cleared his throat. "Ms. Hale, I assume you're licensed in this jurisdiction." Margaret smiled faintly. "Illinois, New York, D.C. federal courts." Richard Cole looked like he was about to be sick. "Your Honor," Richard said quickly, "this is highly irregular." "So was attempting to financially starve a spouse to force default judgment," Margaret replied calmly. She opened her briefcase and placed it on the table. The sound echoed like a warning. "Before we proceed," Margaret continued, "I'd like the court to review newly submitted evidence regarding hidden assets, offshore transfers, and coercion related to the prenuptial agreement." Evan's heart skipped. "What?" he snapped. "That prenup is valid." Margaret finally smiled. A smile without warmth. "Mr. Parker," she said, "do you remember threatening to shut off Lena's access to her father's medical fund unless she signed that agreement the night before your wedding?" The courtroom gasped. "That's a lie." Evan shouted. Margaret tapped her folder. Text messages, emails, voice recordings. Judge Whitman leaned forward, scanning the documents. Richard Cole began flipping through the copies dropped onto his desk. His hands shook. This shows unreported accounts," Richard whispered. Margaret nodded. 3 shell companies, 2 overseas accounts, 1 cryptocurrency wallet. She looked at the judge. Total undisclosed marital assets, $11.4 million. Evan's legs gave way. He collapsed into his chair. "You told me she was helpless," Richard hissed under his breath. Margaret turned toward Lena. For the first time, her voice softened. "You did exactly what you needed to do," she said. "You survived." Then she faced the court again. "Your Honor, we request immediate asset freeze, exclusive occupancy of the marital residence of my client, and referral for financial fraud investigation." Judge Whitman didn't hesitate. "Granted." The gavel struck. Once. Twice. Evan felt his world crack. "This isn't over," he shouted. Margaret leaned closer. "Oh," she whispered, "it absolutely is." Epilogue. 3 months later, Lena stood in her own art studio. Sunlight poured through tall windows. Paintings lined the walls, bold, emotional, alive. Margaret watched quietly from the corner. "You never needed me to fight for you," she said. "You just needed someone to stand beside you." Lena smiled. "No," she replied softly. "I needed to remember who I came from." Somewhere else, Evan Parker sat alone in a rented apartment, staring at court documents and headlines that no longer mentioned his success, only his downfall. And the woman he once mocked? She had finally found her voice.